You're on night ambush somewhere west of Chi in late 1967, attached to the 25th Infantry Division. You've been lying still in the wet grass for hours. The monsoon rain has finally eased, but everything around you is still dripping. Leaves, helmet, rifle, even the claymore wires under your fingers. The jungle is strangely loud for a place where people die. Crickets, frogs, mosquitoes whining around your ears. Somewhere far off, an artillery battery thumps toward the Cambodian border. You're focused on one thing, movement on the trail. Then something cold and heavy slides across your boot. You freeze. It pauses too. You don't know if it's a root, a vine, or a snake. The stories rush back at once. The two-step pit viper that supposedly kills you before you can fall. The cobra that spits venom into your eyes. The bright-banded snake that likes to bite sleeping GIs. You try to keep your breathing steady. Because out here, the enemy isn't just shooting at you. Some of the things that can kill, you don't carry rifles at all. They crawl. They slither. They swim. And what most people don't realize is that the fear of these poisonous creatures sometimes changed how units patrolled, slept, and even fought, even though actual fatalities from bites were rare compared to bullets and mines. On paper, venomous animals didn't rank high on the casualty charts of the Vietnam War. U.S. Army Medical Studies estimated only about 25 to 50 snakebite incidents per year among American forces, and only a small fraction of those were life-threatening thanks to field treatment and evacuation. But the jungle didn't feel like paperwork. Vietnam is home to around 200 species of snakes, including cobras, kraits, and pit vipers, plus giant centipedes, scorpions, venomous fish, and sea snakes. Add in poor visibility, constant fatigue, and half-understood rumors, and suddenly every rustle in the grass feels lethal. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. Even when they didn't kill, venomous creatures shaped the daily reality of American soldiers. How you walked, where you slept, when you dared to take off your boots. Field manuals were updated, medics got special training, and veterans still tell stories about snakes, centipedes, and poison fish half a century later. Tonight, you want to walk through that world. Daylight brings you face to face with what soldiers came to call the two-step killers, pit vipers wrapped in jungle myths. You're moving down a narrow trail at dawn, your squad strung out in single file. Elephant grass brushes your sleeves, taller than your helmet. The air is heavy 80 to 90% humidity, that mix of red mud, rotting vegetation, and sweat you now associate with Vietnam. Your point man halts, raises a fist. At his feet, coiled beside a rotting log, is a bright green snake with a pale belly and triangular head, bamboo pit viper, one of several pit viper species common in the South. The rumors say if it bites you, you get 2 steps before you drop. Some guys call it the two-stepper. Others insist there's an even deadlier 3-step krait somewhere out here. What most people don't realize is that these stories were often exaggerated, but the venom was still serious. Pit viper bites can destroy tissue, cause massive swelling, and untreated, lead to internal bleeding and shock. Modern studies of Vietnam's green pit vipers show they're among the leading causes of snakebite in southern Vietnam today. Army medical reports from the late 1960s show that while bites to U.S. personnel were relatively rare, the psychological impact was huge. One internal medicine history notes the commanders had to fight misconceptions that snake bites were common and always fatal, and that Viet Cong supposedly seeded caves and bunkers with snakes to slow troops down. An infantry medic with the 1st Cavalry Division Airmobile in 1968 later recalled taking every snake call seriously, even when it turned out to be a harmless species. The fear did half the work. Guys would freeze up, refuse to move off trails at night. Tactically, that fear mattered. When your platoon is afraid to step off the beaten path because of snakes, you're more predictable and more vulnerable to mines and booby traps. Officers had to balance realistic training on snakebite risks with keeping their men aggressive enough to maneuver. Once you've learned to watch every patch of ground for vipers, the jungle punishes you a new way, with snakes that like to hunt at night. Months later, your unit has shifted north toward I Corps, rotating through fire bases supporting operations near Quang Tri and the DMZ in 1968 to 69. You're sleeping in a half-sandbag bunker, boots off for the first time in 18 hours, flak jacket rolled up as a pillow. Something brushes your bare ankle. You remember the briefing, kraits, slender, banded snakes whose venom attacks the nervous system. Some species, like the Malayan krait and banded krait, have venom potent enough that modern toxicologists rank them among the deadliest snakes in Southeast Asia. Here's the detail that changes how you see the entire war. Kraits are nocturnal and sometimes enter shelters where people sleep, which meant that men on night duty or sleeping on the floor of bunkers or hooches worried about waking up paralyzed. Marine and Army veterans have told stories of waking to find snakes curled next to them or dropping out of sandbagged walls and thatch roofs. One Marine from the 3rd Marine Division remembered standing guard near Kisan and being more scared of the damn snakes on the wire than of incoming mortars. Then there were the cobras. The king cobra, which can reach 4 meters, about 13 feet in length, was encountered in jungle and even in latrines and hooches. While true spitting cobras are less common in Vietnam than in some other regions, American troops often believed any cobra could spit, and that belief shaped how they reacted, ducking, turning away, firing wildly into the brush. Medical histories note that anti-venom was available for major snake species, but the real problem was time. If you were bitten at some remote landing zone in the Central Highlands, it could be hours before a medevac bird reached a field hospital at Pleiku or Da Nang. Psychologically, these night hunters eroded something crucial: your ability to rest. Instead of true sleep, you drift in and out, one boot on, flashlight within reach, convinced every creak in the bunker is a krite sliding along the sandbags. After a few weeks of that, your hands shake on patrol for reasons that have nothing to do with enemy contact. And once you start losing sleep to snakes, the jungle introduces a different kind of venom, not usually fatal, but unforgettable. You're back in the lowlands now, working with elements of the 9th Infantry Division in the Mekong Delta during the wet season of 1969. Here the war is mud, rice paddies, and brown canals instead of steep jungle ridges. The hooch you share with 3 other guys is built on stilts. At night you can hear things skittering in the thatch overhead. One evening, as you pull on a damp jungle boot, you feel a stabbing pain across the top of your foot, like someone jammed a dozen hot needles into the same spot. You yank the boot off and a giant centipede tumbles out reddish-brown, easily 15 to 20 centimeters, 6 to 8 inches, long, all legs and armor plates. It's probably a local form of Scolopendra subspinipes, sometimes called the Vietnamese centipede, a species whose venom is now known to cause extreme, burning pain, swelling, and sometimes necrosis, even though deaths are exceedingly rare. Medics in Southeast Asia and later clinical studies describe centipede venom as a complex mix of peptides, histamine, and other bioactive compounds that can trigger intense inflammation and, in rare cases, systemic symptoms like fever and nausea. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. A centipede or scorpion sting usually didn't take you out of the war permanently, but could sideline you for days. Soldiers remember legs so swollen they couldn't fit into jungle boots, arms that throbbed like broken bones, and red streaks of infection crawling up the limb if it wasn't cleaned properly. Add in forest scorpions and large spiders, including tarantulas, and suddenly every piece of clothing, every helmet, every rolled-up poncho has to be shaken out, checked, and rechecked. Men sleep with shirts tucked tight, trouser cuffs taped, sleeves rolled down even in oppressive heat, just to keep the crawlies off their skin. The tactical effect is subtle but real. An oral history from a 25th Infantry Division platoon sergeant describes how night reaction times slowed because men were reluctant to jam their bare feet into boots full of unseen things. If something hit the perimeter, they'd waste precious seconds shaking boots, banging them against sandbags to evict centipedes and scorpions before slipping them on. Once you've learned that even your boots can bite you, the last place you feel safe is the one place you should, the water that promises to cool you down. Late in your tour, you get a short break from the bush, temporary duty near Da Nang with support elements connected to the 1st Marine Division and Navy riverine units. For a few days, your war is sand, surf, and the growl of jets overhead instead of triple canopy jungle. The South China Sea looks harmless compared to the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Until you wade in. Vietnamese waters host highly venomous sea snakes, many of them elapids with potent neurotoxic venom, as well as stonefish, stingrays, and other venomous marine life. Military medical guidance from the era warns divers and troops not to handle sea snakes and to wear footwear in shallow coastal waters and around fishing operations, because bites often occur when people try to remove tangled snakes from nets or walk barefoot. Sea snakes are usually shy, but their venom can be devastating: muscle paralysis, respiratory failure, and kidney damage if not treated quickly. Even when encounters are infrequent for U.S. forces, the training films and safety briefings make a deep impression. Then there are the fish. A stonefish, almost invisible against sand or coral, can drive venomous spines into your foot with a single misstep. Medical literature from tropical waters describes their venom causing excruciating pain, tissue damage, and sometimes cardiovascular collapse. What most people don't realize is how this shapes behavior even far from the front lines. Sailors and Marines on safe beaches stay close to shore, boots on, or simply avoid swimming altogether. Riverine forces like those in Operation Game Warden or mobile riverine force operations in the Delta have to worry not just about enemy fire, but about what might be waiting in the muddy water if they go overboard. Psychologically, that means there is no true sanctuary. The jungle ground might hold vipers, the bunkers might shelter kraits, the hooch roof might hide centipedes, the ocean itself might sting or bite. Even on Ranner, you never fully relax. The war follows you in the form of venom and spines and unseen stingers. By the time your tour edges towards end in 1970, you've learned that Vietnam's most poisonous creatures are rarely the main killers of the war, but they are constant companions. The official numbers, a few dozen snake bites a year among U.S. troops, very few fatal, don't capture the way these threats feel in the moment. What most people don't realize is that venom changes behavior. Pit vipers make you suspicious of every patch of grass. Kraits and cobras steal your sleep and turn bunkers into traps of their own. Centipedes, scorpions, and spiders add agony and infection to an already hostile environment. Sea snakes and venomous fish remind you that even the sea, your one escape from the jungle, can cripple or kill. And this detail changes how you see the entire war. For many American soldiers, Vietnam isn't just a contest of firepower and ideology. It is a daily negotiation with a living environment that seems determined to break you down, physically, mentally, and emotionally. You are fighting an enemy you can sometimes see in the tree line. But you're also fighting enemies you almost never see until it is too late, the ones coiled in the grass, hidden in your boot, or gliding past your legs in dark water. In the end, surviving Vietnam means more than dodging bullets. It means learning to live with the knowledge that, at any moment, something very small and very poisonous can change your life in a single step, a single sting, a single bite.